Okay, great. And so the purpose of tonight is to go over what Apple does, and it's kind of to try and complete what this new area of supply chain management is all about in the multinational. Actually, if you sign up for a unit with the top schools in the US or Europe, you're going to get a perspective from the multinational generally. And you're really not going to get what we teach you in the first 7 weeks of this unit. And it's very generic, and it's something that with the gig economy blossoming as it is in the last decade, there's so many more people that are just sourcing as an SME, as an individual unit. So it's so important that you also are exposed to this growth area of global sourcing. Having said that, we still need to understand how do multinationals do it. And I guess one of the leading multinationals in this area, whether you like their product or not, and you know, I'm agnostic because I've got a Samsung here and I've got a second Samsung, Microsoft. I've got another Samsung. I go all around me. I don't really have Apple products. So therefore, I can say that I'm not biased tonight when I'm talking about Apple. All right. So, but some of you might be Apple people, and that's fine, because then I will call on you at certain stages and we can talk about your experience. Now, you all have the PowerPoint sites. Are we good? Okay. Now, if we have the PowerPoint slides, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Now, we're going to do two things tonight. We're going to try something for the first time. We're going to incorporate Kahoot with the PowerPoint presentations. In other words, I'm going to ask you to, you're going to have your Zoom screen open and also your Kahoot game open. And so, and 3 stages through my presentation on Apple, we're going to come back to the Kahoot and answer 3 questions. Then we're going to go through the next stage, and then we're going to answer another 3 questions. And the purpose, number 1, we want to try something new. Number 2, I think it may help with your attention span and to just feel a little bit more at home with what the Kahoot questions are asking you, rather than trying to rely too much on your memory right at the end. So before we go any further, I'm going to open up the Kahoot and invite everyone to join the Kahoot session. There's our Kahoot. It's week 10. How does Apple do it? We're going to play and teach.
So you're not sharing your screen.
Good. I'm glad I didn't, because there were questions you would have seen. So I'm glad. All right. So we're going to share the screen, and thank you for that feedback. All right. Screen 2. All right. So there it is, Ski Daddies, right at the beginning. This is so exciting. Now, while you're entering into Kahoot, 794-7512, please have your video on. And just a reminder, we're going to be switching through Kahoot and Zoom, Kahoot, Zoom, Kahoot, Zoom. Many of you have got one screen, so we'll give you time to go from one to the other. So don't feel that you're under pressure as we go through this evening. By the way, you know, Kahoot, many of these questions, there are 30 seconds for you to complete the question, not 20 seconds. You have a little bit longer. And at the end of the day, if any of you have technical difficulty in running the Kahoot, we will adjust for that. So the main thing is that you feel some gamification of your experience tonight, and that helps you keep your interest in the content that we are covering. All right, so many of you are signing up, 794-7512. That is the plan. Now, just to double check, I will type that in the chat room, 794-7512. We love the music in the back, don't we? We should play some other music at other time, but I like that one anyway. All right. And so if we Let me just turn it down just a tad. There you go, just a tad. All right. All right. So you're all in there. We've got 20 of you signed up, and 24 minus 2. There's 2 that haven't signed up yet. Koyong, Kate, you're in. I think, yes, you're in. Excellent. Great. We don't want any one of you to miss out. And first of all, let's go back to the slides. Now, make sure you have downloaded these slides from your Moodle. And what we're going to do tonight is get straight into the lecture. By the way, I've already given an advance notice. Andy McEwen, who is supposed to join us tonight, will be joining us next week. There was a miscommunication somewhere between us, and he wasn't able to attend tonight, which is fine because next week we can spend the whole week on logistics. And I can tell you that there are, with the COVID and border closures, supply chain gyrations, and everything that's happened in the last 2 years, 18 months, the student demand for courses in logistics has gone up 30, 50% on prior years. It's amazing. This is in US schools, by the way. I'm sure that trend is in many other areas as well. So suddenly accounting and finance is not the only sexy discipline in town. It's now supply chain and logistics. So good for you, because you have joined our great unit, and that is what we're covering. Now, just a reminder, here is our framework, and basically we're in that last of those 7 boxes. All right, we did when to source, where to source, how to manage. We did 3-circle control framework. Then 3 weeks ago, we actually introduced you to how multinationals manage their suppliers. What was the most important thing? What is one word that you took away from this new topic area about how multinationals manage their suppliers? What is one big word? Can you type that into the chat room now? What is one big word that differentiates the challenges that multinationals have versus the SME? Can you type that into the chat room now, please? You've got to be quick on this. All right, I think most of you have got it. Reputation, because multinationals are larger, and in some ways they've gotten large because they have figured out over 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, a decade, multi-decades, how to develop their brand name. Like Apple is a perfect example of that. But the bigger you are, the more you are exposed to problems if one little thing goes wrong. All right, so that's the big challenge that multinationals have. And so that's, if you're a small potato, you can hide, and you've got no reputation to protect. All right, you've just got money that you have to protect. All right, because you lose your money, you're bankrupt, you're out of business. All right, the multinationals, they're not going to lose their money, so to speak, but it's their brand, tarnish their brand, tarnish their image. When things happen with Facebook only 4 or 5 days ago with the whistleblower and the outage of Facebook 3 or 4 days ago, the stock price went down 4.5% overnight. Like, this is when you're big, you can fall very big, very quickly. All right, so that's the big thing, and that's what we've been doing for the last 4 weeks. Okay, now remember, these were the main frameworks that we talked about when we got into how multinationals manage their suppliers. And this was the multi-sourcing framework, because invariably, when you get large and large and large and large, you're not just going to source from one supplier. Or if you're Apple, you're not going to source from one supplier for every component. If you are Nike, you're not just going to order from one contractor. Nike has 116 contractors in Vietnam, okay, making their shoes. 116, not 16, 116, right? So invariably, there's never one supplier that can be big enough to be a single source for a multinational. That's why we start with the top circle, multi-sourcing, right? But invariably, contracts are incomplete. And so what we learned 2 weeks ago was that multinationals will do lots of selection and monitoring games to make sure that they can sort of close that incompleteness of that contract. And you saw a video 2 weeks ago. Remember I showed you the video of the engineer on the procurement team for PQI in Taiwan drawing something on the whiteboard. What was he doing? In that video, what was he doing?
He was figuring out the cost of tooling by reverse. I forgot the name.
Reverse ABC. You got that, Maria. Very, very good. He was doing reverse activity-based costing to figure out backwards how much. Okay, here is the product that we're making. Here is our product. All right, how much does the tooling cost to make this product? Now, tooling can cost you anywhere from really cheap soft tooling for $5,000 to over $20,000. That's for the molds, go into injection molding machine. Like it's very, it's like a big lump sum amount. You just got to lay out and you just hope that you can make thousands and thousands of products from that tooling and then get your money back. Like, these are all things that you try and work out when you're managing these suppliers. So this is why, you've got this engineer that had 15 plus years with Acer, I believe. And because of all that experience, he could quickly figure that out on the whiteboard. And that's amazing. I've never, ever seen that done by an SME. Like they don't have the manpower, the resources to do stuff like that. All right. So, these are all the little tricks that I have witnessed with multinationals, especially in the smartphone industry, but I've never seen the stuff that I'm going to share with you tonight with what I have learnt from the insiders, my connections with Apple in China. And so we're going to look at how Apple manages suppliers in China, its selection, its negotiation, its management, all right, and its social responsibility, and maybe less on the social responsibility. Like that is increasingly like 100 times more critical now for a lot of companies compared to 10 years ago. It's just like the whole world has just woken up to this, and it just becomes even 10 times more critical for the reputation risk that these multinationals face every day. Okay, so you could go to the EPS News and read about Apple's supply chain relationships. It's complicated, yes, all right? Or you can go to the trade show and interview 1,000 suppliers, in which a lot of these suppliers were competing to become an approved supplier for Apple. And I've learned a lot through actually visiting suppliers myself, not from reading articles or books about Apple. And this is exactly from my own experience. So I'm going to cover selection, negotiation, management, and the social responsibility challenge. Now, as we go through each of these parts, then there'll be a short Kahoot session for each of those parts to go through. All right. So and remember, you all have these PowerPoint slides. You have downloaded them. So make sure you have access to everything I'm covering today. Now, just a background, Apple is basically selling 250, 300 million more smartphones every year. In its heyday, HTC in 2012, 2013, they were only making 30 million smartphones a year. Apple was making 10 times that amount. Okay. And HTC is not a small company. HTC is a huge multinational. Apple is 10 times that size, all right? So this is one of the largest companies in the world, like market capitalization over, getting close to $2 trillion. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. It passed the $1 trillion market cap in 2018, and it just continues to grow. But when you're making smartphones, there's uncertain demand. There's hundreds of components. There's short lead times and delivery cycles, multi-sourcing, multiple measures and decisions, TCQDS. Now, you learned some of this 2 weeks ago when I was telling you about what HTC does. And so here's an example about what happened over a 10-year period when, if we look at the orange, and the orange is others, if we look at the black, notice that Apple has been very, very steady over the whole decade. But what this doesn't tell you is that Apple has the highest margins out of all of the competing companies for its smartphones. Apple's margins are between, always have been close to about 30%. That is, they sell a $1,000 phone to you, which is normal these days. The price range of their phones now starts around $1,000, crazy, 4,000 ringgit more. All right, they will take home $300 like clean as a margin for every smartphone they sell. Xiaomi, on the other hand, if they sold a phone for 1,000 or 2,000 ringgit, they're just going to take home 4%. All right. So even though this shows that, Apple's growth or market share has always been around 15%, that's not much, but it's making 30% margin on that. So that's what brand does. If you look at Huawei, which is the biggest grower over this time, Huawei's grown the most up to 2018. You'll notice that it became very, very strong after 2015, the last 3 years. Then, the Trump administration come in and started to push back against Huawei and limiting what components they can get and technology they can use, and sort of drove Huawei a lot out of business. But even though that said, Vivo, Oppo are still dominant players along with Samsung, especially in Southeast Asia. Okay, Oppo, Vivo, and Samsung are probably the dominant players. If you can go onto Lazada, you can go into the smartphone shop today in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in other countries in Asia, and get a smartphone for 1,000 ringgit. Okay, and then that suits the budget of a lot of population there. All right. So why am I saying you this? Like, this is big. Smartphones are big business. And like, even back in 2018 and 19, it was 300 billion per annum, like over $500 billion now per annum business. It's just huge business. If we look at, the suppliers that go in for Apple, notice that Foxconn is the major assembler for Apple. And you're probably thinking, Apple just has one supplier, Foxconn. No, it has many assemblers that work and actually put components together. But it has hundreds, literally hundreds of suppliers that supply components to these assemblers. And these assemblers, like Foxconn, are basically called EMS manufacturers. They provide electronic manufacturing services, EMS. All right, Celestica, Foxconn, Pegatron, there's dozens and dozens of major companies in this EMS manufacturing business. All right. And so just to give you a hint of what does it look like in a smartphone assembly, it's going to be like this on the bottom right-hand side. And this is the closest I've seen what I've seen in HTC. And this is a clean room. Inside the clean room, one of your groups actually looked at this factory, and this was Joyhung. Remember, they were making a smartphone for a European brand when I visited that company. All right, so here's our Kahoot questions 1, 2, 3. So let's go over to the Kahoot, and we're going to start the game. How come there's only 13 of you in the Kahoot? What happened? Do you have to join again? What happened?
My Kahoot is on my phone, and when I turn off my phone and when I turn it back on, it says the connection is lost.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, you get back in once we. All right. Look, I'll give you time to use your computer for your Kahoot. Makes it easier for you. Okay, we got in. Okay, so let's start. Remember, we're only doing questions 1 to 3, so don't overcome it. Week 10, okay, let's go ski daddies again. All right. Now, question 1 out of 12, multi-select. Which of the following is a big unknown in the single supplier management model? The single supplier management model. All right. So in the single supplier management model, which is the big unknown? What is the thing that we don't know about with the supplier? Something that we don't know. Definitely, we don't know the cost structure of the supplier. That's definitely, but there may be more than that. Supplier forecast. All right. So it's good to know the supplier forecast as well. Now, that's going back pre-Apple, but that's fine. We want to just keep that in mind. All right. Now, Vicky, you're on top. Jianxi, Michelle, Yinghui, Tina. Well done. All right. So let's go 2 out of 12. What is one way suppliers can hide cost information from you? Now, this is, remember, we need to understand the games that suppliers are playing, and then we better understand how Apple is stopping that game dead turkey. All right. What is one way suppliers can hide cost information from you? They're definitely going to hide it in the tooling costs. Remember, they can't hide in labor costs because everyone knows what labor costs. Can't hide it in material costs. Everyone knows what material costs are. All right. And stop you from visiting the factory. You can still figure out what the costs are. All right. But in the tooling costs, that's where they can hide it. So, you understand some of the strategies. One more, and we go back into Apple, getting you ready for this. Maria's the highest climber. Very well done. Vicky, Michelle, Jiaxi, Lisa, and Mars. Well done. 3 out of 12. What is one thing that suppliers will understate when sharing with you? Understate, not overstate. Okay. They will understate, something that they will understate. Because often they want to overstate things. Okay. So many of these items they will overstate, but there's one item they will understate to make themselves look better. Yeah, the extent of outsourced processes, because buyers don't want to be told that, the supplier outsources everything. Well, why? What are you doing for me, Mr. Supplier, if you're outsourcing everything? Why don't I just go directly myself? All right. Okay. So they're going to understate. Obviously, they're going to overstate the other parts. All right. So just warming you up here. We're warming you up. All right. So just hang on to your Kahoot, ski daddies, and we go to the next one. Selection of suppliers. What does Apple do? We're going to just drive it up a notch here. I'm going to speak a little bit faster if I can. And I want to tell you, what is the brand name of the car that is shown in this picture? Come on, speak up. Ask the
BYD.
question. Pardon?
BYD.
BYD.
How many of you know BYD? Put your hand up if you know BYD. Come on, do you know? Yes or no? All right. And what does BYD stand for?
BYD.
Build your dreams. All right. BYD. All right. Now, BYD, what is their DNA? Hello.
Originally, they were doing cell phone battery.
Wow, Michelle. Where did you learn that from?
I watch your recording.
That's what I want to hear. That is so good. Michelle, well done. Yes, they were originally doing cell phone batteries. In other words, their DNA is battery manufacturing, not car. Okay, it's battery. Why does that matter? Why do I tell you about this? I was supposed to be talking about Apple. Neil, are you in the right lecture or what? You're talking about cars, but this is supposed to be about Apple today. No. Here's the point you need to take home. Listen carefully. All right. BYD, all right, 15 years ago, just after early 2000s, they were making cell phone batteries, and they tried 3 times to become the approved supplier for Motorola. On the first time, Motorola rejected them. Second time, Motorola said nope, but they kept on iterating. On the third time, they became the approved supplier for Motorola, and that launched BYD into becoming an internationally renowned component manufacturer for international brands. And so in that process, Motorola taught BYD how to become a world-class brand. Neil, why you tell me this? We're supposed to be talking about Apple, but this is one of the reasons why suppliers see becoming an approved supplier for Apple at all costs, all right, is like winning the lottery. Why is that? Why is it that suppliers feel if they become approved supplier of Apple that they have won the lottery? There's a question. Come on, I've got 5 seconds to answer or we move on. 3, 2, 1.
From the slides, implied endorsement of manufacturing quality.
Absolutely. So what can they do with that?
They can get more business.
Exactly. So when I want you to think, all right, suppliers are not lining up to Apple thinking, cha-ching, we're going to make money from Apple. No, you're not going to make money from Apple. You're going to learn a lot from Apple. I want you to think about that. Remember in week 3, week 4, I told you about the different motivations that suppliers can have. One of them could be to make money. Number 1, get paid, learning, okay? And number 3 is copy and then actually make a product for your own domestic market. All right. Number 4, become world-class yourself, like what happened with BYD. Wow. Okay. So I want you need to broaden your perspective of what it's like to be a supplier in this industry. And I can tell you that I've done a case study on one of these suppliers, interviewed him directly, the owner of one of these suppliers to Apple. And I'll tell you about that in a minute, where he had this world-class mentality about making the best product in the world. And his response to Apple will blow you out of the water, and we'll come do that. All right. What have I got here? What is this list? 3, 2, 1.
Apple supplier.
It's a supplier list. Yes, supplier
Yeah.
for Apple. Now, Apple had hundreds and hundreds of suppliers, but it wasn't until about 2012 that public pressure was put on Apple to report who are your suppliers, and social governance to report. And this is what they did. Now, I want you to see a few suppliers in here. How come Corning is not in here? Hello? What am I touching?
The screen.
Screen,
What's this?
the tempered glass.
What type of glass?
Tempered glass.
Tempered glass.
Tempered glass. You've been watching too much. You've been watching too much Squid Game. This is Corning.
Gorilla Glass.
This is Gorilla Glass. All right. I know a tempered glass is used in the Squid Game, but Gorilla Glass is even stronger. All right. Now, some of you are laughing, so I know you've been watching that too. All right. Now, the Gorilla Glass is the big thing that Corning came to Apple with, and it actually changed Corning's future as well. Why isn't Corning listed in this supplier list? They supply the glass to Apple. How come they're not listed? Because technically, Corning is a material supplier. So Apple buys the glass directly from Corning as an agent, and then it sells that glass to Foxconn. Wow. What kind of arrangement is that? Well, that's the power that Apple has, and actually it makes a profit on that arrangement. It buys it for X dollars from Corning, its glass, and then sells its own glass to Foxconn that goes into its own phones. All right. Okay. Now let's have a look. There's some critical suppliers here. I've actually had a chance to talk to Light-On Technology. They're a major company that they were making a special technology back in the turn of the century before MP3s come along. What were they making? 3, 2, 1. Come on, fast here.
CD.
Yeah, CD, exactly. They were actually making the light that shines onto the CD as it's spinning around to pick up the digital signal, which is the music. So that's why they call themselves Light-On, right? And so their components go into the iPhone. And so they're a major company, a major supplier. Hon High Precision, what is that one? That's Foxconn. Hon High Precision is the name of the company, but we know the brand as Foxconn. Foxconn is a major EMS provider for Apple, but not just Apple, but also for many, many other brand names around the world, including HP, Lenovo, and Toshiba, and many other brands. Pegatron. What about Pegatron? Any of you heard of that? That's another EMS provider. We're going to talk about Pegatron later on for another thing. Now, and then Sony. You mean Sony is a supplier for Apple? Of course. Sharp. Yeah, of course. Samsung. You gotta be kidding me. They were in court, taking each other to court for years. And Samsung's supply to Apple? Of course. These are grown-ups here. They're doing business. Right? They could be fighting on court on one side of the world, but they're actually supplying each other on the other side of the world. This is normal business going on here. We're going to make smartphones. Samsung makes a lot of electronics that go into the Apple smartphone, high-end electronics. And so there you have it. HTC, at one stage, I told you the story 2 weeks ago, that Samsung was their major LCM provider, liquid crystal display provider, and they weren't able to forecast their sales. They under forecast their sales, and they had to go to Sony as a second provider to make up the backlog. All right, they had a bottleneck because they got the forecast wrong. Well, Sony and Samsung are suppliers to Apple. All right, and LG is in here. It's in there somewhere, and we're going to come back to that. Number 3, what else? And we've got numbers here. We're going to count up the 16 things that Apple does. All right, so let's just, number 1, Apple is actually works off this fact that when the suppliers are so attracted to the brand that they'll do anything to become a supplier of Apple. All right. So first of all, Apple has suppliers knocking on its doors all the time with ideas. Oh, we've got this new technology. What do you think, Apple? What do you think? All right. All right. So Apple has that many other brands do not have. Okay. Number 2, Apple has a lot of suppliers that enable it to actually create competition and multi-source. That's and I gave you an example about what it does with the Gorilla Glass. Gave you an example about it not only has Foxconn, but has other EMS providers, that's electronic manufacturing service providers, such as Pegatron. All right, and we're going to come back to that in a minute. Number 3, Apple focuses on which key area when they're selecting their suppliers. Okay, you have 3 seconds. Which key area do they focus on when they're selecting suppliers? 3, 2, 1.
Capacity.
Technology and quality.
Technology and quality.
Technology and quality. Yes. And it's not technology first and quality second. It's just both.
Capacity.
Yes, Vicky. Sorry. Okay. All right. Number 3. Number 4. There's a focus on technology capability. You just said that they care about technology, but let's just expand this for a little bit more. Number 4. All right. So they really focus on hard to make samples. And I'll give you an example that the technical perfection that they have, like engraving. And so, you know, how many of you have got an Apple product or a MacBook or something with an engraving on it? Anyone? Right. So they'll go to a supplier, and the supplier will do the engraving, and the engraving will, from the side point of view, will look like that. Okay. Right. You with me? Right? That's what engraving is like. You etch into the metal or the plastic or whatever. And then Apple told us, why, sorry, it needs to be perfect like that. All right. All right. You may not even notice the difference, but Apple will just tell us, sorry, you fail. Next supplier, please. All right. That's how, this is the perfection that they have in the requirements of the suppliers. I want you to get, like, this is, engraving's got nothing to do with the functionality of the Apple product you buy. Are you hearing me here? Hello. All right. But they're so perfection on just that little detail that it drives suppliers crazy, yet they still keep coming back, because if we win that lottery, then our future is made. All right. I want you to feel that this is like winning the Squid Game in some ways. All right. For want of a better example. Now, just moving on here. I know there was one supplier that went to Apple with this technology, and the technology was to do with the touchscreen. How many of you have got a MacBook? Anyone? All right. So Oliver, I want you, Oliver, Anisha, anyone else? Amaral. Okay. Can you just get your finger and touch that touchpad? Can you do that now? All right. Does it feel nice and smooth? And when you touch it and move it, isn't it amazing how the mouse is just so precise?
Yep.
All right. How can that be? Like, yeah, but O'Connor, so the HP one is precise too, and the Novo one, and the Dell one, and the Samsung. No. There's a big difference between that little touchscreen you have on your MacBook and the touchscreen technology on other brands. And here's why. We're going back about 18 years. Apple found this special technology of a supplier that was making this touchscreen technology. And that supplier, guess what? Their yield on making this touchscreen technology was, get this, 8%. That is, there was 92% rejects coming off the end of the production line for every good touchscreen that was coming out. And Apple went to that supplier and said, look, here's 150+ million US to develop your touchscreen manufacturing because we want that technology. And that's where that touchscreen you're touching now, that's where that came from. And and Apple basically owns the patent to that special technology. So here's a supplier that can hardly ever make these touchscreens because the yield is so low, but because it was special technology Apple wants, Apple invested in that and made that supplier great. Wow. Wow. Can they do that? Absolutely. And so Apple will tell suppliers, we don't show us the certificate. Every one of you did an RFQ, right? And you actually printed out and you copied a screenshot of the certificate to say that it is the factory and I believe you. And you pulled the wool over O'Connor's eyes, or the supplier pulled the wool over your eyes. Well, Apple says, I don't want to see your certificates. We're going to visit, our engineers will visit your factory and we're going to watch you make what you say that you can make for us. And that's what they do, right? They don't have any time for this certification. All right. So number 4. All right. Number five. Okay. Their management system. They will actually go to a supplier. And I know this from 3L Coils because I interviewed the owner of 3L Coils in Taiwan. And Apple came to them and the engineer came and watched them making their inductors. They make inductors, like inductors are the generic of all components. All right. But this manager of 3L Coils, he said, sorry, you might think they're generic, but we make the best inductors in the world. Our inductors will last for years. They will not wear out. We make the best in the world. And it takes an amazing vision of a owner like that to be able to say that about a generic product that they make. All right. I want you to think about that. Now, Apple went to 3L Coils and said, we want you to be the supplier of our new iPad 4, which, this is going back 8-9 years ago. Right. And they said, okay. So, all right. So we want an engineer to come and watch your process. So they watched the process. And then Apple said, okay, we want to see your management system. And the owner said, sure, we've got a full balance scorecard system. We do TDQSC. We have weekly, monthly reports. We have full HR system, management team meetings, everything. And it blew the actual engineers from Apple away. This owner and the systems that he had in 3L Coils actually impressed Apple so much. It was amazing. And so, so Apple will go beyond not just saying, show us your process. They want to see, show us your management system. Prove to us that you not only have the process, but you have a good management system in place to know that you can sustain that process, month and month on end for whenever we need your supply. So when I was talking to one of these engineers from Apple across the border in Shenzhen many years ago, we pulled out an Apple iPhone and we said, okay, so let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at this phone. So what about the screen? Is that critical? Critical. What about the cover? That's critical. What about antenna? Critical. What about the buttons? Critical. Is there anything that's not critical? And he said, the only less critical thing is the packaging. Everything else, in our view at Apple, in the whole product that we make, that iPhone is critical. There's no non-critical and critical components. Everything is critical. Oliver, you got a question here.
Yeah, just relating to the touchpad, because I was always curious if other brands, wherever it may be, also had the same tech where there's a little magnet placed under the touchpad, because the touchpad normally used to go down, up and down, right? You actually push it down for the click. So you get the sensation of clicking, the feedback. Yeah. But now there's actually a magnet coming up against the touchpad, letting you know that you clicked it, but actually the touchpad doesn't move.
Isn't that?
So
and that's
there's
Apple.
some sensor, for the
Yep.
Is
Yep.
it only for Apple? And it's a nerdy question, but I was really curious. Maybe you know.
I'm pretty sure. I
Mm.
know Apple touchpads have just always been different. Yeah. But I don't know about Magnet coming up was that supplier that did that. But I know the original touchpad was a very special technology at the time. And it was just like nothing else in this world of laptop computers. Very good question. All right. So everything's critical. And you think I'm going crazy here. What about color? Well, it has color experts to make sure the exact color is used. All right. So now I've got a test for all of you. Are you ready, Ski Days? This is before the Kahoot, not Kahoot yet. Just a minute. All right. Calm down. We're not going to go over the Kahoot. I've got the next slide. I've got a test for you. Okay. So I want you all to pay attention. All right. So I need you to tell me, okay, A or B, which one is darker? All right. And so if you can put A or B in the chat room, please. Jesse says A, Nusrat A, Nusrat B, Esther A. All right. Yinghui, Lisa, Yinghui A question mark. Looks the same dark. Skylar, come on, you can't be on the fence. Audrey, B. Okay, so I want to tell you the real story because Apple approached, I don't know if you know one of the main chemical brands around the world, and that is Bayer. Do you know Bayer? B-A-Y-E-R. Bayer. Come on, you know
Yeah.
Bayer.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Bayer. All right. So big brand, right? Yes or no in chemicals? Okay. So Bayer went to Apple and said, oh, we want to supply the white paint for the new Apple computer. All right. The two Apple computers here. And so they submitted their test sample of white exactly to the specifications of what Apple required of white. And the response from Apple was, oh, sorry, that's not the white that we want. True story. All right. But exactly, from an engineer's perspective, it is the correct white. But Apple said, sorry, that's not the white that we want. All right. It's exactly the same game I just played with you. There's no difference between A or B. They're both black. But this is the kind of challenge. This is the funny decisions or standards that, or the hoops that suppliers have to jump through to become an approved supplier of Apple. And here's one of the major chemical companies in the world being told, oh, sorry, your white is not the white that we want. So that's crazy. Wow. All right. So, all right, that's on the selection. All right. So okay. Ready for the Kahoot? Are you ready, Ski Days, for the Kahoot? Yes or no?
Dr. Neil,
Yes, please.
I just want to ask, so because Motorola, if the supplier failed to become their approved supplier, they can, try again for the second and third time. But for Apple, will they still give you a chance to prove yourself you can become the approved supplier?
Yeah, but often, if you've got new technology, then you've got to prove that technology to Apple. And then Apple, often they will say, oh, okay, you invest the $50 million into the technology, and then we'll decide. All right. So it's a lot of times it's a Hobson's choice. That is, you just got to take it or leave it. And you just got to keep on knocking on the door. Yes, you can go back. You can always go back to them, but it's just going to keep costing you money, Lisa. So it's a very good question. Let's have a look at our Kahoot here. It's very, I want you to jump in with questions, please, because next week when Andy McGowan from LogChain speaks, we're going to it's going to be an amazing session, because I tell you, logistics is just the critical discipline of these times now. All right, everyone wants to know about logistics for the reasons you all know about. Okay, so let's go to our next one. Scoreboard. Who's on top of the scoreboard? And we've got Vicky, Michelle, JC, Lisa, and Mas. All right, now let's go to our next question. Are you ready for the next one? Are you ready? Back in the Kahoot. What is one thing that suppliers will likely overstate when sharing with you? Remember, before it was understate. What is likely that they will overstate? Thank you, Oliver, on the BMW. What is, okay, they will overstate the yield, yes. All right, now why the yield? They're not going to overstate, and the extent of outsourced processes. Wait a minute. That shouldn't be ticked. They're going to understate that. That's a little error there. But anyway, 18 of you got the yield, so that's the main thing. And the one that accidentally pressed that, well, good for you. All right, so that's the next question. All right, Adrian's moved up, Mass has moved up, Vicky's on top still. Next question. Remember, we're doing 4 to 8 here. BYD first major break with a US buyer was with. Its first major break with a US buyer was with who? Come on, you get this early. More points, the faster you are. Subar's laughing. I'm sure you got that in. Newsrate, you got yours in, I can see. Yes. Come on. BYD's first major break with a US buyer was with. You all got this, Motorola. Exactly. It was Motorola. Motorola. And, you know, owner mindset plus learning from international brand. Those things go together. Look where BYD is today. It is the #1 electric vehicle manufacturer in the world, basically. Like, it makes more electric vehicles than Tesla. So it's just an amazing company. All right. So let's have a look. Adrian's moved up. You got that. Jancy, Michelle, and Vicky, you're on top. But there's another one, 6 out of 12. We're only halfway. Which ranks most important when Apple chooses a supplier? Which ranks the most important when Apple chooses a supplier? There's 2 delivery costs there. How come? I think you all got this one. All right, got 22 answers in, so we get you in. Remember, we've got a little bit more time to answer this time, so less pressure. Get the answer right. Yes, all of you got it. Technology, except one went for response service. Technology is the key. They're always interested in your technology, your innovation. And we're going to talk about that in a minute when they're managing the supplier. Vicky, you're on top. Adrian's moving up. Michelle is on fire. Mass and Jesse are still going. All right, remember, we're going to 8, 2 more to go. What is important in Apple's supplier selection? What is important in Apple's supplier selection? The management system, like 3L coils. Show us your process, like 3L coils. The color, like Bayer, or all of the above. 21 answers. I think you all know this. The most important. Yes, of course, it's all of the above. So we're doing well here on the Kahoot. And the final one before we go back to the PowerPoint slides, just so you moved up. Adrian, Michelle, Vicky, you're on top. Where's Vicky? Where are you? Vicky, are you showing your video? Hello, where are you? Hi.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. And one more before we go back. 8 out of 12. Which ranks second most important when Apple orders from a supplier? Second most important. Second most important. If it's not technology, then it's going to be and it may be equal with technology. So what is that? All right. It's definitely not cost. Our response service. Okay. All right. Delivery. All right. This is a tricky one. Delivery and quality. Second most important. I want you to think about, because quality and technology, they never differentiated. Quality and technology were the most important. There was no second. There was no second in terms of quality and technology. So that's why delivery and quality. Yeah, trick question. Yeah, a bit. Neil, why do you do this? All right, I just want you to remind you that this was why Apple was so strange, because it doesn't differentiate between quality and technology. Okay, so then we go back to our last question. Oops. Oh. Why does Apple want to control where the raw materials are coming from? Why does Apple want to control where raw materials are coming from? Why? Remember, I gave you the example, and this is a tricky one. We're going to talk about this. All right, Neil, a bit early before I showed you a slide, but I did give you the example with Corning, where they actually controlling Gorilla Glass. They're buying it off Corning directly and then supplying it to Foxconn. But a little bit more about that. Let's go to our PowerPoint slide, shall we? All right, now in the PowerPoint slide, we've got slide. Here we go. All right. What is one thing that suppliers do not want to share with you? All right. I want you to type in to the chat room now from A to H. What is one thing that suppliers do not want to share with you? We're trying to make this interactive tonight. One thing. Into the chat room, please. One thing they do not want to share with you. They do not want to share with you. Actually, there's a few things here that they don't want to. They don't want to say that they're outsourcing. They don't want to say they're using lower quality materials. They don't want to share that changes are made to the materials used. Because normally in a contract, when you contract with a supplier, especially with these multinationals, they make it very, very specific, and they'll have clauses in the contract that supplier, if you change the materials, you need, number one, first, you need to fill out a form to get approval from us that you can change the materials. Every change, you need to fill out a form. Right? You know, these are normal contract clauses that multinationals have over suppliers. Fixed investment, tooling costs, yield. Yield they don't want to share with you because that gives away inefficiency, 8%, but luckily the technology saved that supplier. And often if they want to share the yield, then they're going to overshare. They're going to say they're at 90% and not at 75%. I want you to think about that. That's a game that suppliers play. They don't want to share customers because in some ways they make specific clauses with customers where they're not allowed to disclose who their other customers are. But normally when you talk to suppliers, you ask, can I have permission to approach some of your other customers that are in another country? And then the supplier might get permission and then you can contact them. But so for many of these items, suppliers do not want to share, not just one. And if they have to share, they're either going to overshare or undershare. With tooling costs, they're going to say it's more. With yield, they're going to say it's more. With fixed investment, they're going to say it's more, right? With outsourcing, they're going to say it's yet less. With lower quality materials, they're not going to say that they have that. With changes made, they're not going to say, they're going to say less. You see? So when they're forced to share, they're either going to lie to say that they do more, or they're going to underreport. So I want you to think about the games that suppliers play with Apple, with all companies, but Apple's able to get around this based on what I'm about to share with you next. And so here's an example of LCM modules. So remember, we've got our Gorilla Glass, our tempered glass, okay? Gorilla, all right? And up until about 8 years ago, there was normally 3 layers. There was the TFT, the touch center, and cover glass. But then the technology came along about 7 years ago where the TFT and touch control were combined into one. So you only had to put 2 pieces together. That is the cover glass and the touch control. And so what Apple, this is a very critical area of the assembly. And Apple had its special technology of machinery investment that, and I told you about this in earlier weeks, that they would actually put the machines in LG, like LG was one of their major suppliers of LCM modules. LG Electronics, that's a Korean company. They would buy the machines and put it in the LG factory in China. And then they told LG, we own 60% of the capacity of this machine for the next 3 years. Then after 3 years, you get to keep the machine and do what you want with it. That's what they did. Now, you're probably thinking, why would they do that? Quick question, reminder, why would they do that? 3, 2, 1, yell out.
Because the old machines has lower efficiency.
Efficiency, maybe because it's the Apple technology, not directly. Why else do you think Apple will
Technology advancements.
Why would they control that machine inside of LG? Why would they do that? Come on, we've covered these issues before. This is nothing new.
They don't want competitors to get it.
True, you're right, because then Apple controls that machine and controls that technology. What else? Come on, we covered this 2 weeks ago. Actually, it was your first answer you put in the chat room tonight. What was Apple trying to do?
To protect their reputation.
How can they protect their reputation? By putting a machine inside a factory of a supplier.
Because they don't own any factory but the machine. So if anything were to happen, I don't think they are liable for it.
Well, it may not be legal, but it's the perception that, this factory is an Apple factory, and then it doesn't get burnt down. It doesn't get protested against. It doesn't get blockaded because no one knows what's going on inside the factory. You with me here? Because people don't see it as an Apple factory. But basically, it is an Apple factory because they control the machines inside the factory. So they're having their cake and eating it too. Wow, Apple. We're only up to number 8. We're only half. I told you there's 16 things, right? All right, good. All right, let's keep moving here. All right, now Apple will go to suppliers, and normally in this industry, they'll go to suppliers every 3 months, 6 months. Oh, sorry, Mr. Supplier, the consumers are pushing us on this phone. We've got to put the prices down. Mr. Supplier, you've got to wear a 5% cost down, please. And take it or leave it. Like that's, HCC does that. All the brands do that on their suppliers. There's always cost down going all the time. So Apple goes to 3L Coils, and the owner of 3L Coils said to me, he said, oh, Apple came to us after we started working for them, then they asked for a cost down 5%. And his response was, sorry, no, we're not doing 5% cost down. He said, oh, we'll do less than that, but we're not going to do 5%. So it takes a very bold owner to be able to say that to Apple. Like, you know, you need to know what your own DNA is to be able to say no to Apple. You know, you try so hard to become their major supplier, and then you say, sorry, not going to do cost down. Now, what I tell suppliers to do to back up the fact that you don't want to do 5% cost down is that you need to have accounting information. You need to have accounting information or evidence of investment or improvements made. We're investing all this money. That's why we cannot afford to do cost down 5%, but we will be around in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and 2 years' time when your product roadmap goes into new technology, and we'll be ready with our own roadmap to support your new technology. Yeah, that's a different conversation. You're moving away from this static negotiation of, you know, give me 5% cost down into a negotiation where you're actually talking about the roadmap over the next 6, 12, 18 months, supported by, oh, here's our accounting and evidence of investment improvements made. You've got to see me not as a transactional supplier wearing 5% cost down, but more as a strategic supplier that will have the technology capability to support your own technology advancements that you're going to make in the next 18 months. Wow. You know, it takes a real bold owner again to be able to say that to someone strong like Apple. Wow. Okay, so there are many different things. So let's have a questions. Now, we just did 9, and that was the question about materials. All right, but 10 will follow up on that, and we're just going to go to the Kahoot and do question 10. Why does Apple want to control where raw materials are coming from? They want to control that so they can, especially when they can understand the yield of the supplier, they can understand the productivity of the supplier. All right. So if Apple controls the inputs to the supplier, they know the outputs of the suppliers, then they know that what the supplier's input to output production ratio is. So therefore, the supplier cannot overstate what their real yield is. So supplier A to Apple is yield is 80%, supplier B is at 75. Apple, that is what the engineer was telling me, oh, we'll go to that supplier at 75%, and they'll say to the supplier, oh, can you try A? Can you try B? Can you try C? Can you try D? To help that supplier get up to 80% yield efficiency, without directly saying that, oh, supplier A is doing A, B, and C, and D, but they will just give a nudge to these other suppliers with a lower yield to help them improve their own efficiency. Wow. Like, this is what they do in that multi-sourcing. Like, why would they do that? Well, if they improve their efficiency, then those suppliers can, number one, be more sustainable, and number two, in the future, they can actually wear more cost down from Apple. It's like it's dog eat dog world out here. All right. No one does favors for anyone. Just, I'm going to help you improve your yield, but I'm going to take those improvements for my margin, you know. All right. So, you know, these are the games that have been playing. So here's your Kahoot. Are you ready for this Kahoot? Are you ready, first of all? Okay. All right. Michelle was on top. Skylar, you moved up. Adrian, Vicky, Jesse, doing very, very well. Great efforts. 10 out of 12. How can suppliers push back against cost down demands from Apple? How can suppliers push back against cost down demands from Apple? How can they push back? And I gave you a real example of how 3L Coils pushed back to Apple. Okay. Now remember, be careful. There's one really good answer, which was the blue one. You could say the green one is partially correct, but that's not real pushback, is it? All right, like take it or leave it. Like that's not real pushback. Like that's just nonsense. All right, you've got to if you are able to do blue, then you can do green. You can, if you've got a full account of investments, machinery, innovation, you know where you're going, your roadmap is, then yes, then you can tell Apple to take it or leave it. You with me here, all right? So you need blue in order to be able to do green, all right? So green is not a pushback tactic on its own. Okay, so really, really good. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Remember, we've got 2 questions left in that Kahoot, and I hope you find it a little bit more meaningful as we're going through the PowerPoint slides. And here we go, final part. Now, this is how Apple is managing the suppliers. Now, remember, when they're selecting, it's technology and quality, but when they're managing, it's technology, then equally quality and delivery. Now, what is this? What do you see here? 3, 2, 1.
Components.
Components.
It's like components inside a iPhone, maybe.
This is components inside a iPhone copy. Actually, I've got 2 of these in my workplace in Malaysia. So if we're in the classroom, I'd actually bring it into the class and smash it with a hammer, which is what I did in the class in 2019. And all the students are going, oh, wow.
Does it run on Android? Does it run on Android with like a fake interface?
It did. It ran on a MediaTek interface. It wasn't even Android, and it had its own antenna. But look, how do you make a copy iPhone very quickly? You solder the LCD panel directly to the main board. You'd never do that in the iPhone. You never do that in the smartphone, because that soldering will come apart when you drop it a few times, and then suddenly the phone's inoperable altogether. So there are many different ways where you skimp on different quality items and you get very cheap parts for here and there. You can make a copy iPhone. You can make a copy for 1/10 of the price, basically. You can go across the border in Shenzhen here, Huanjie Bao district, where there's just thousands and thousands of component suppliers all in one huge building. You can buy all those components and make your own iPhone. Okay, so there's nothing, this is not rocket science. Okay, right. And these copies were, I could go down, it's only about 1.5 kilometers from, actually, I'll just point it. There you go, out in Hong Kong, you can see up there, about 1.5 kilometers down there, there's a district called Sham Shui Po, which is basically the electronics center of Hong Kong. And you go down there and you can buy these things. You can't buy them now, but I remember up until about 5 years ago, you can buy these things for about 100, 120, 150. No, I think they were that's US dollars. So I'm talking about 800 Hong Kong dollars, 100 US dollars. And they work, but they don't have Android. They don't run iPhone platform. And these ones that they made, they had a little antenna and it comes out of the phone. It's so funny. All right, you wouldn't believe it. All right, so there's the spec sheet for a product. And so if you go into a procurement team, now all of you did the RFQ for the iPad, right? All right, so if you were serious about that and you're actually, huge scale, and you would you would actually get even more detail about the cost breakdown of the iPad to understand all the different components, parts, so you understand the margins that you are making on that iPad. I mean, if you were in this, you had your own brand, you were putting on iPads and you were selling hundreds of thousands or millions around the world, you would go to the nth degree of making sure you understand every component that is going into that product and the cost of every component. Okay, so you didn't go that far with your RFQ. Why? Because you're just ordering 50, 100, 1,000, 2,000. You never do that as an SME. But when you're a multinational, when you're in a procurement team, this is what you do. That's another big difference that multinationals do. They need to know the cost breakdown of everything that goes into their products. And they have the power to command that, and you need to do that. All right, so number 10, all right, supplier has the power to make the supplier, Apple has the power to make the supplier the whole capacity, require the supplier to reserve capacity to Apple. They can do that. And sometimes suppliers will say to Apple, look, we cannot do costs down as fast as you want. We've just invested this money in new machinery and we want to depreciate this machinery over the next 12 months or 2 years. And when we depreciate, that means our costs add up to A, B, and C. And so that's the cost of what we're supplying you is more than what you're going to pay us. You know, give us a break. And Apple said, oh, you did invest $1 million in machinery. And Apple will say to them, oh, for that $1 million, we will accept that you depreciate it over 5 years. That is, yes, you can write off 200,000 per year over the next 5 years, but you cannot write off $1 million over 18 months or 2 years. And Apple will just tell the supplier that. All right, so this is the accounting pressure that Apple puts on when they're doing this cost down. They go to the nth degree of understanding the different games that the suppliers play to, you know, suppliers are trying to push back, right, and saying, well, why I can't do this cost down because I'm investing in machinery and we need to write off this machinery. Well, Apple said, yes, you can write it off, but you've got to stretch it out over 5 years, not 2 years. You know, so this is the power that Apple has over the suppliers. Number 10, number 11. This one's a good one. Number 11. All right. They work with a second OEM manufacturer to enhance competition and choices. What does that mean? Well, companies such as, okay, back in 2013 and 14, the iPad 4 came along. Okay, you know the iPad 4, all right? It was a huge improvement over the iPad 2 and iPad 3, but they did not get Foxconn to make the iPad 4. And also the iPhone 5 came along, which is a huge improvement on the iPhone 4. They got Pegatron in Shanghai, their Taiwanese factory, EMS provider, which is basically a brother of Foxconn. Like Pegatron came from Asus, I think Foxconn came from another major brand out of Taiwan. Pegatron is basically Foxconn as an EMS provider. They went to Pegatron and said, oh, Pegatron, how much to make this iPhone 5C? How much to make the iPad Mini 4? And Pegatron gave a quote to Apple. Also, they got Foxconn to give the same quotes. So guess which one provided the higher price, Pegatron or Foxconn? Type it into the chat room now. P for Pegatron, F for Foxconn. Which one gave the higher quote in the cost to manufacture the iPhone 5C and the iPad 4? Was it Pegatron or was it Foxconn? Who gave the higher quote? We should be finished. We're near the end of this. We're going to have a break and then we can have the rest. All right, many of you, some of you Foxconn, some Pegatron, Esther, Pegatron, who else? Who thinks Foxconn? Put your hand up. Who gave the higher quote? Okay, who thinks Pegatron? Okay, so which one do you think Apple selected? Well, Apple selected Pegatron, but did Apple select Pegatron because they had a higher price or a lower price? Did the price matter to the selection? Hands up for yes. Did it matter? Yes or no? Yell it out, please.
Yes, else you wouldn't start this whole internal feud, right? Would start the competition to push down prices.
Well, actually, okay. Who thinks Pegatron gave a higher price? Put your hand up, please.
Maybe higher, but very similar price with the Foxconn.
Okay, Adrian, Liu Xu, Yinghui, Audrey, Maria, you all think Pegatron pay higher? You're correct. Pegatron gave a higher price to Apple. That means if Apple chose Pegatron for iPhone 5C and for the iPad 4 mini, that means Apple is going to have a smaller margin than if it went to Foxconn. In other words, Apple went to Pegatron and gave up margin. So here's the big question. Here's a question for all of you. I want you to, this is participation here. Why did Apple go to Pegatron knowing that it's going to have a lower margin?
I believe that.
Sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead, Darren.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. I believe Apple went to Pegatron, even though Pegatron gave a higher quote, was because Apple wanted to increase competition, because competition will increase innovation and also force Foxtron to be humbler and not so easily raise prices in the future.
Okay, right. Darren, spot on there. Exactly that. They just want to create competition. Like, this is crazy. Oh, please give me your bid. Oh, you got the higher bid. Oh, we choose you. Like, it just, this is, it really didn't matter, did it? All right. Apple was aware that Foxconn is becoming a monopoly on the EMS services it's providing Apple, basically a monopoly. But yeah, you can be a monopoly, but we're not going to make you get bigger because we're going to grow other EMS providers as well. All right. So they're very smart. Wow. So they're creating competition. Okay. Number 11. What else does Apple do? Number 12. What else? They control yields by controlling material suppliers. Like I said earlier, they track the materials that are sent to suppliers, and they know the output from suppliers. So they know the input, they know the output, they know the yield. So the supplier cannot say that the yield is 80% when it's really 70%. And Apple won't let them get away with that. Because in some ways, it's very hard for suppliers to have information asymmetry with Apple, because Apple is basically controlling second-tier suppliers, third-tier suppliers, not just their first-tier suppliers. Wow. This is crazy. But this is why we're giving a whole lecture on this tonight. And there's, 16 crazy things that Apple does. All right. Number 13, they have 800 more technical engineers on the ground in China. I don't know if they made these days. This is going about 5 years ago, but it's over 500. What do you mean by that, Neil? Like, they got 500 plus engineers in the full-time employment, full-time employed, paid for by Apple to live in China and visit various suppliers. It's not like they're in the office in a 32-story building in Shanghai or Shenzhen or Guangzhou. No, they're in the hotel in this city for several weeks while they're actually working with a supplier. Then they move to another hotel, work with another supplier. And like, you know, most of these engineers' times are in the factories of the suppliers. All right. And I remember the time that when there was a problem with the iPhone found in China, that means one of the major clients of the iPhone, this is going back many, many years, China Unicom, they complained that one of the iPhones had a screw missing. And immediately for several weeks after that, on the 15 lines that were making the iPhone, normally they have one supervisor for the 15 lines. They immediately got their engineers, said, okay, we want one supervisor for every line. So 15 supervisors. They multiplied their supervision of those assembly lines by 15 times because they didn't want that thing to happen again. Like, unbelievable. Wow. All right. So technical engineers enables Apple to do things that other multinationals cannot do. Like having hundreds, you can do many, many things. My friend that worked for Apple is actually based in Shanghai, and his job is to just monitor the supplier that provides the resin that actually glues the glass and the modules, TFT module together. His job is not to monitor those two parts, but the supplier that provides the resin. Like, this is just crazy. So, you know, these are the type, what they can do. Number 14, 3 more to go. Extensive product testing is done. And even for iPhone 6, like, you know, they're doing this for 7, 8, 9, you know, current iPhone out. 15,000 steps of bending, weight, drop tests. Like, they're all doing this, but Apple just goes to an nth degree. But what is really interesting is that early field failure analysis in the first week of sale, it's all hands on deck. The EFFA team, which are basically engineers, they are basically just buying and testing and finding out very, very quickly in the first week of any iPhone release to make sure that they find problems before consumers find problems with that product. And like, you can imagine, like, this is risk, this is reputation risk protection. Okay. So we can go to the final part, questions 11 and 12 of our Kahoot, and that will basically take us to the end, and then we can all have a rest and we go to the Kahoot. Next, we have Michelle, you're on top. Vicky, Adrian, Skylar, Jancy. Let's go. 11 out of 12. How does Apple create certainty in its supply chain? I think you know the answer to this one. Come on, Kahootans. Did they pay more to Pegatron or did they pay less to Pegatron? All right, obviously they paid more to a second assembly supplier. It was more important to create competition. Okay, it was important that they created competition. That was more important than giving up margin in the process. Like, they gave up margin, all right, preserving margin, I mean. All right, Vicky, Darren, very well done. Okay, 12 out of 12. How does Apple control its political environmental risk exposure? How can they control their political environmental risk exposure? We've covered this one. The answer is dead in front of you. I think you know this one. There's one really good answer. It definitely by owning and controlling the machines in the supplier's factory. That is, no one knows that it's an Apple factory, but they basically have control over that factory as if it is an Apple factory. So if that factory gets labeled by the China regulators that, oh, you need to clean up your environmental pollution or this or that, then the word doesn't get out to say that, oh, this is an Apple factory. You with me here? All right. But Apple still controls what that factory does because their machines are in the factory. No one knows that. Okay. So basically, that's our end of a Kahoot. Apple, how Apple does it. We'll come back. Podium, Adrian, number 3. Well, very well done. Then number 2, Vicky, and number 1 is Michelle. Very well done, Michelle. And the runners up, Skylar and Darren. Very well done. Let's have a look at the next. And it was a different way of playing this week. And I think the most difficult question, which ranks the second most important when Apple orders from a supplier? All right, that was a, yeah, that was an ambiguous question. Yeah, I can understand that one. All right, view report. Let's have a look. I think most of you did much, much better than on average, and 61% correct. And the players, let's have a look at your results. The top 10, over 67%. Very well done, Michelle, Vicky, Adrian, Skylar, Darren. And we see more. Esther, Jancy, Gabriella, Subha, Kate, very well done. Imran. Now the lowest out of that top 15 is Yinghui at 58%. So therefore, Nadia, you count. Nusrat, you count. Now Maria, Tina, Max, 50%. Seymour and Audrey, Koyang, Nadia. Okay, we're struggling down the last 2. But Audrey Almas got 50. That's pretty close to that 58. So very well done, most of you. Let's have a break. These 16 items. Now, did we get to number 16? I think we were pretty close because the last one number, I think we covered 15 was, they're doing a lot of ergonomic improvements of their factories. And I actually told you about that in week 2 and week 3. We want to take you through the factory and to show that guy trying to solder and sit and balance at the same time. There's, in a lot of the factories that I've visited, there's very little ergonomic issues being solved. And what the big takeaway for this unit, having you been exposed to what's going on in the factories, is that when you've got ergonomic problems, that can lead to product faults and rejects at the end of the assembly line because you get variations in processes. All right, very interesting takeaway. And IP protection, I would say they have very, very strict rules on employees. Like they'll fire you if you do something wrong beyond their SOP. And it's, they get leakers of confidentiality arrested. They'll just double down on secrecy on everything. This was 8 years ago, but they're still doing that today, like just crazy. So these are the 16 crazy things that Apple does, in part, number one, because they can. But I think the big takeaway I want you to think about is it's because there's a mystique about being an approved supplier for Apple. It makes you or breaks you. It's going to break you in terms of you're not going to earn much money, but it's going to make you in terms of teaching you to become world-class, in terms of bringing your brand to be a world-class level where you start to make profits in your own way if you become an OEM yourself, and then Apple becomes your teacher. So that's why suppliers are lining up to Apple. So there's the 16 items. Let's have a break. We'll come back and reflect on what we have done. I'll see you. Let's have a 8-minute break and I'll see you back in 8 minutes. Okay.
Doctor,
Hi.
have you been following the news about the China blackout? Like, since you're talking about the Apple supply chain, do you think it's going to be a very big hit to Apple? I'm actually quite curious to see how they could solve such a huge crisis, though.
Yes and no. Yeah, the China blackout is a short-term item. Longer term, these multinationals, they don't think such short term, they think more longer term. So Apple is expanding a lot of its capacity into Vietnam and to India. And so they already understand that they just cannot be 100% exposed to China for its majority of sales of products around the world. So long-term strategically, it's going to have less of an impact. But of course, short-term, supply chain logistics wise, these things have, short-term impacts.
Thank you, Doctor.
Start. All right, what I want to do now is talk about your projects. Number one. All right, let's say PowerPoint. Let me share the screen. I've got a PowerPoint. We're going to talk about your presentation, but I've met with some of you. I'm going to share the screen. Which screen? Can you see the Can you see this PowerPoint? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So before we do that, how to present with influence, we're going to talk about that. But I think before that, new slide. I don't like that. Yeah, that's better. All right. All right. So number one, your project needs to have a clear motivation, right? So where do you get that from? Well, all of you need to refer to a McKinsey report or a report by a major player in your industry that you are talking about. Okay. Sorry, I didn't spell that McKinsey correctly, but anyway, let's move on. All right. Number two, the big thing you need to think about is the page, I would say about page 5, the page 5 table. Many of you are probably thinking, oh, I've got to do page 1, then 2, 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, 8, 9. No. You've got to, all of you, you've got to have a page 5 table. What's a page 5 table? The page 5 table is something that really lays out the comparisons that you are making, whether you're comparing countries, you're comparing companies, you're comparing regions, you're comparing something on different characteristics, which are the rows, then that is that's kind of like your core of your project. And that core is preceded by your motivation, and then there may be some model that forces you to how to create those rows that go into the table. There may be some little evidence, and that leads up to the table. But then after that table, then you start to expand on what that table is saying. And then you expand in another table, and then you conclude. All right. And so many of you know that, and I've already outlined that, well, you should be following something like this format, right? Which I've already provided you, right? Title page, problem, context, framework, analysis, summary, okay? What I'm saying is that this thing here, or this framework, this table that summarizes what you're doing, is the core of your project. And all of you as a group, you need to sit down and have complete clarity about everything that's going in that page 5 or page 6 table. That table is everything about your project. What leads up to that table is explaining why that table is why it is. What goes after that table is expanding on your analysis. So that table is your core. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'll give you an example. If we look at the reports from last year, a very good one was done by the A team. Actually, I think this was the best report that was done last year. Okay. Oh, by the way, before I go any further, put your hand up if this is useful for you. All right, because I don't want to just fill in every week because it's my job to do 12 weeks and then I get paid. All right. I want to make sure that every hour that you spend with me counts. Okay. All right. All right. So, okay, good. Case study of Mac Food. Don't worry about the topic so much, but let's go. What was their page 5 or 6 table? And I would say that their big table was probably in here. They time, temperature, max warehouse. They basically did a warehouse cold chain case study of Mac Food. So Mac Food provided cold chain warehouse distribution for McDonald's and many other brands. That's why they called it Mac Foods. They made it very, very clear the pain points, and they also made it very, very clear what the industry challenges are. And then their analysis, this is what made their project so nice, was they talked about the solutions, industry challenges and solutions. You can call this industry or their problems and solutions. It does, whether you call it challenges or problems, it doesn't matter. You got problems and solutions. All right. And so then they talked about comparisons of, they tried to do a table that does comparison and then a summary of comparisons of solutions based on their interview. And then in the end, their conclusion, positive, negatives, and surprises. All right. So this was one of the best reports, and probably in 12 pages. They did squeeze it in. And then they used a 9 point. I would say if we did 10 points, keep it, probably don't make it less than 10 points. Just keep it down to 10 points if you can. All right. And notice that half of the space is tables. I like tables. I'll give you another example, a better example of how a table drives everything. So if we blockchain study, all right, so this was the main table and it's page 4, so it's early on. So they're comparing 1, 2, 3, 4 companies. Is this large enough for you? Can you see what I'm doing here? All right. And basically there are different rows that they're comparing on, but then after that table, then they talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and notice that they're basically talking about the Bumblebee Foods versus Walmart Shrimp. So food versus food. They got the meat versus the milk, and then the Farmer Connect was on its own. So I forced them to look, don't just talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separately. Why don't you compare this food with this food with this food, because they both come from cows. Farmer Connect's the odd one out, but that's fine. Let's just make it a fifth one and add that in. All right. So that table again became their modus operandi. And then near the end, they were able to summarize the benefits based on their analysis, and in the conclusion come after that. Again, the table becomes, it holds the whole project together, the table in the center. And that's what I want you to think about. The table in the center is critical. One more, and then we'll go on to some videos. I think the e-waste one is probably the best one. This was probably, I think this was one of the best ones that was done, the e-waste. Correct me if I'm wrong. And if we go to the table, and I remember they looked at 2 companies, and they did this table here. And this is page 9, getting a bit late. Earlier would have been better, but they spent a lot of time. And I remember explaining to the group that summary of the challenges, approaches of the interview. Remember, number 1, they get a very high mark. Number 1, they went and interviewed the companies. This is not just a Google data mining project where you just get data from Googling everything, right? They went and interviewed 2 companies. And I told them, don't just write words in a table, but summarize the table. So I could quickly go down here and say, oh, based on the challenges faced, then this one is low, this one's high, this one's low and high, this one's medium and low, this one's low and medium. I can do quick comparisons on this factor, on human resource, on capacity. I don't have to read the fine print. And then the approaches to overcome the challenges, then, you know, warehouse capacity, of course, it's a high challenge for this one. And then how did they approach that? So I really like this table because it was, okay, it's small print, but then I force them, look, can you do a high, low, high, low, high, low, thing like that? Don't just fill the table up with more and more words. All right. So just keep that in mind. Don't make the mistake of more words. It makes a better table. All right. This was the initial table that just puts the company background. But what was important was to talk about the problems and solutions, or challenges and approaches. Okay. Let me just stop for a moment. Any questions on this? What questions do you have in mind? All right, here's the big takeaway for all of you. Yes.
I suppose because of COVID, we're all doing B. So, but that shouldn't affect like our marks, right? It's not like people who do A usually do better.
If you do A, the scope for doing well is high in both. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's okay if we like just do internet research.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got to make choices as a group. What is your objective, and what is your interest? You know, Maria? You know, these are key questions that you have to make. Just, and your question is, oh, because I did the interview, did they get a higher mark because of that? No, but they wrote it up very, very well. So therefore, they demonstrated a very good analysis of the interview that they did. Oh, and this was done last year under COVID too. So let's not be compensating here. They did the interviews through Zoom with the people in these companies. So, you know, actually in some ways it's easier, but they did that. All right. So, but I'm here to encourage you. All right. What's the big takeaway? Why am I telling you this? The big takeaway is that every one of your groups, there's 6 groups, every one of you all need to meet in the next 48 to 72 hours and make sure that you are very, very clear of the middle part of your project. That middle part of your project is, what is that table going to look like that summarizes whatever data you are collecting? And what goes before that page 5 is sort of the motivation and factors based on your research or theory or whatever that makes it important that you need to consider certain factors. Then those factors become rows in the table, and then your data is in the table. What goes after that table is your expansion of those things you're comparing in the table. You with me? So it's easy to do the front part. It's easy to do the last part. The hardest part is to get that middle part clear. I mean, that clarity needs to be agreed by every member of the group. You cannot be to say, oh, you're in charge of the table, I'll just do the front part. Okay, so please, everyone, all groups, meet next 72 hours and just double confirm that you're all on the same page with that middle part of your project. What is that data going to look like? How big is that table going to be? How many columns? How many rows? Get that right. Okay. All right. Get that right. And you'll find the front part will be easier. The back part will be easier. Homo. Okay. Okay, good. All right. Let's get on to some presentations. All right. I've already given some of this advice to groups so far, so that's why I'm just reiterating some of my ideas. Yeah, this one got the highest. And in the end, the score it got was 80 out of 100. Like it was 80%. Okay, 80. It got a HD. Okay, so you've got to do a good job to do well in the final project. Okay, it's not, you know, I'm not here to fail you, but you've got to know as a group exactly what you are doing. Okay, so that's why you're going to meet in the next 72 hours. Just to double confirm that, please, everyone. Now let's have a look at some presentations and give you some ideas of, all right, what's good, what's bad, you know, what stood out. Okay, remember, because the presentation takes up 20% out of the 45%. All right, so then that's very important, right? Okay, so let's have a look. Let's give an example of, let's have a look.
My name is Dou. My name is Ahmad. My name is Fatma. My name is Sarah. My name is Nada.
So we can't see the video.
Neither can I.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so this was very well done. Actually, I think the top person was one of the top students from last year. Let's
My name is Ahmad. My name is Fatma. My name is Sarah. My name is Nada.
Next, and we are going to present to you our project findings on system math. Before we start, let me quickly set the scene for today by showing you the list of key topics which will be covered in our agenda. Prior to our project, we have interviewed a local factory which manufactures and distributes industrial ventilation products to Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. It's a subsidiary of System Math, a global company which is headquartered in Sweden. Supply chain. In our report, we did explore the different aspects of both international and domestic options available to the Malaysian subsidiary.
Underground MRT stations where tunnels are equipped with tunnel.
As you can see from this table, both companies supply the same product to Systemair Malaysia, which are three-phase squirrel cage motors, but Teko's factory is located locally in Malaysia, whereas Regal Beloit's factory is located overseas in China. After doing a comparison between the two companies, we found that the only differences between them were the order size and lead times, which is in line with what Emma was discussing earlier in the previous table, where the order quantity and delivery time for the overseas supplier is usually more than the local one, as longer lead time means that larger orders have to be placed so that the company does not run out of stock too quickly as the delivery time takes longer.
Okay, a few points. Okay, number one, you've got to speak with some energy. Number two, you've got to be careful not to put too much onto a PowerPoint slide. So here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 comparisons. That's fine. If I was in charge of this PowerPoint, I would maybe have my cursor. If I'm talking about order size, then as I'm talking about it, I would move it around like this. And so you can use that and help the reader go through. Let's have a look at another one.
Hi, my name is Haley.
My name is Joey.
My name is Isyang.
My name is Nicole.
And we will be presenting on a case study about Mac Food and Warehouse Cold Chain Management today. Now, in this picture, you must be wondering how this has to relate to cold chain management. According to a study by the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, approximately 1/3 of all the food produced for global human consumption is lost throughout the supply chain. Now, this impact is very critical and crucial because unlike food waste, which only occurs during the final consumption, food losses are defined as the decrease in edible food mass throughout the part of supply chain that specifically leads to edible food for human consumption.
All right, so again, very nice start. And I like the hook, like starting with,
as you can see, yes, was the
starting with a question to the audience. All right, so asking a question to the audience is a nice way to start your presentation. All right, so just keep that in mind. I like it right at the beginning how each of the group members are introduced. Now, I understand you cannot all be in the same room, so it's hard to make that even more come alive, but you can actually always do a intro at the beginning where all of you introduce each other. You rehearse it, you rehearse the introduction, you do rehearse the introduction 3, 4, 5 times, get it right, and that introduction just goes for 20 seconds, all right, 15 seconds. You make it very, very clear. Who are you and what are you doing? All right, so that's one way that you do that. Then you can always do your individual presentations separately and then
approximately 1/3 of all the food produced for global human consumption is lost throughout the supply chain.
Distributed via 3 channels, with the main channel being franchise restaurants such as McDonald's.
So to make it easy for you, you can use Zoom. Zoom will actually do this rendering straight for you. You do not need to do that fancy stuff that I'm trying to do in front of green screen, okay? All right, so any one of you now, you can actually record yourself beside your PowerPoint slide, just like this with Zoom. Zoom will do that for you. Okay, so, and you can do each of your parts separately and then join it all together, but you just got to make sure that you have that flow, okay? All right, so make sure that you all know what each other is doing So you got to agree on the theme of the whole PowerPoint slide as it goes through and not have 5 different themes that are joined together by 5 different people. Okay. Questions or concerns?
To solve this, industry players have turned to automatic stretch wrap machines to ensure uniform wrapping with the least amount of cost. Another challenge would be the use of pallets in warehouses.
Okay, let's have a look at another one.
Hi, Professor Neil. We are from Group G3 with Miss Aline, Olivia, Isyang, and Ashley. And in this video, we'll be presenting on the implementation of blockchain in the food supply chain. Before getting into it, I will highlight some of the existing issues in the food supply chain. First of all, there are multiple actors involved throughout the supply chain, each with unique methods of recording data. And in many instances, these individuals don't even interact with each other and have little knowledge of each other's actions. This can cause many hurdles, including delays in moving products, chassis surcharge, and degradation of food quality and safety.
Certain food. The void in the inventory data is recognized in the blockchain, and that in turn
3 separate discussions for clearer comparisons, but also having the opportunity to support these.
Businesses need all the help they have available to stay within legal bounds.
Blockchain supply chain systems has yet to be defined. As organizations, this has been a very insightful presentation, and thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so that was that one, and we can do one more at the start.
Hi everyone, we are G5, and today we will talk about the supply chain relocation strategy which use companies move out from China as examples. And these are my team members, Sanjana, Jessica, Joycey, Nikhil, and me. Here is our content. We will explain the motivation factors and the economic reasons of why companies relocate the supply chain from China. Consider suffering factors
and tax incentives which help them in cutting costs and increase cost decision.
Founded by Henry Hassenfield in the year 1923 and has a headquarters in the United States. Up to date, they have 5,800 employees, and in 2020, they had decided that they are going to move all their production from China by the end of August 2021. And they also announced that by the end of 2020, they would like to move at least 50% of their production outside China. Now, why are they doing so? They're doing so because due to the increasing trade war tension.
Okay, so this is one thing that you should refrain from doing, and that is speeding up your presentation to fit in the time. Okay, because it doesn't, it looks sped up and not as clear. So just keep that in mind, and as you're doing, I hope this helps you. All right, and then Continental.
Hi, Dr. Neil. I'm Elaine. With me together here are Abby and Dan. Today, our group will be presenting about the tires industry, focusing on Continental Tire Division, its global supply chain and market operation.
Okay, we want a little bit more energy at the start. A little bit more energy at the start. Energy is so critical in your video. It's so much, all of you can do your presentation, you know what to say, you know what to cover, but you've got to be excited about what you're covering. All right, I'm assuming that you've chosen a topic you're excited about, not what I'm excited about. I'm not forcing a topic on you. I'm allowing you choose whatever you like. Okay, so therefore, because you're choosing, then I'm expecting you to be excited about that. Okay, so that's, you just need to amplify your excitement. Find a way to do that. All right, so I hope some of these ideas give you some
Hello,
ideas.
Dr. Neil. We are Group 8. We will be presenting on the e-waste management in Malaysia. Our group consists of areas. Moving on to the 2019, total of 53 systems can lead to negative externalities to the environment and people.
And this table shows the main regulations that if they do not follow the rules. But then
Okay, let me just stop there. I hope just to give you some insights, and nothing, all of these did well, but I just want to show you that this is a area where you can work on your communication skills. Like no more, there's no other time in the last 2 decades where you are expected to be able to efficiently communicate over video. Okay, just because things are going to go back to normal next year and the year after, we're not going to stop using video for communication. Companies are increasing, yes, they'll interview you over Zoom. That's still going to go on. So you need to be able to present yourself over Zoom. Okay, you cannot just be a little mouse. And because people get the wrong impressions when you're nice over the internet. Hello, I'm Neil. I want to apply for a job. Will you employ me? Okay. People get the wrong impression. They want people to actually be a bit more alive when you are talking to a video. Okay. And that pressure is going to be on you after you finish the Master of International Business. What do I mean? When you go job interview, it's going to be a Zoom. Often it's going to be Zoom. Don't tell me it's going to be face-to-face. All right. A lot of startups now are asking our undergraduates, oh, you're going to send me a CV? How about send me a 90-second video in which you introduce yourself and show me about what you know and why you're interested in working for us. All right. Can you do that? How many of you could do a 90-second or a 2-minute CV on video? Could you do that now? This is real, class. I want you, I don't want to waste your time. I want to give you stuff to think about that makes you even 10 times more ready for when you go for your next job or you go for your promotion. Okay. All right. So you need to find your voice. You need to find a way to be a little bit more dramatic in how you are communicating on the video. Okay. Now, I know all of you don't want to be as crazy as me when I'm on video and all of that. It's not about that. I'm just saying, all right, job demands requires you to be much clearer in the future on Zoom. Your presence needs to come across on Zoom. Okay. Right. Now, when you're setting up video, make sure that your head is close to the top. Okay. Kate, your head needs to be up here. Okay. All right. Amaral, you know, I mean, when you come to record your video, all right, you don't want to be your head at the bottom. You don't want to look like you're drowning. Okay. Don't worry. Some of my colleagues, you know, I'm the head of department of accounting, and some of my colleagues still do this where they're at the bottom of the video and they look like they're drowning. And I ask them, do any of you need oxygen? You look like you're underwater. All right. You've got to look, you're up, you're alive, you're proud, you're alive. All right. That means your head needs to be near the top of the video. Okay. So when you record, make sure you're there. Number 2, make sure that your voice is very, very clear. Darren, I'm sure your voice is going to be very clear because your microphone is set up for that and it's a USB mic setup. If you use that, I'm sure that will be okay. But some of you are using you've got the earphones on, but have you got a separate mic or are you using the mic associated with the earphone? Yinghui, Michelle. All right, so you need to do some testing, record yourself to see how you come across in speaking to make sure that when you're in the video recorded, that your voice comes across very clearly. Okay, so number 1, your head up top. Number 2, your voice is critical. Okay, the clarity of your voice is more important than how clear your face is in the video. Okay. All right. So they're just some little tips I want you to think about. And if you all have to make your 5 sections separately and then join them all together, then all 5 of you or all 4 of you, you need to know what is before you and what is after you. So then when you're joined together, it looks like it is integrated. Do you know what I mean? And so Oliver, if you speak after Adrian, then and then you can have, what have we got? We did this, didn't we, in one group? What have we got here?
The ball, the tennis ball.
Yeah, the tennis ball, right? And then, thank you for looking at this part of this project. I want to pass the ball on to Oliver now. And then I just passed the other screen. And then Oliver said, oh, thank you, Neil. All right, I want to take you to our new part now. And you can just use that to just create a little bit more of a linkage, even though you actually recorded everything separately, okay? So they're just some ideas about how you can actually create a little bit more of a glue between all the different separate parts, all right? Because I understand you're all in different places, and I'm pretty sure that you're not going to make it all at the same time. Some of you got work commitments, I understand that, and different parts, I understand that. So this is some ways that you can improvise to try and keep some connection between all the different parts, okay? I think it's in, and if every one of you, when you're presenting, just keep it very clear. Every one of you needs to know what the theme of your presentation is. What is it that you are reporting on? What is it that you are talking about? Not just your section, but the whole report. Okay, your part in this whole report is, okay, so just be aware of what comes before, what comes after, all right, and how. Questions, please. Audrey, what do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay, in the chat room, anyone in the chat room that's, let's have a look. Darren to everyone. What's this now? Already 87%. Not always tough elevator pitch. I'll do it for recording, sir. Okay. All right. Any questions?
So just to confirm, the deadline is week 12, Wednesday, right?
Oh, technically in the document, there was the deadline was Wednesday, week 12. Let's have a look. Week 12, that means the 20th of October, correct?
Yes.
You're saying, Kate. No, what I'm going to do is allow you, because I know you've got a lot of assignments on, I'm proposing that you have until the following Monday after week 12 to submit both the report and the video. What do you think? Does this help? Does this help you? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. So
Thank
this
you,
is,
sir.
I think that's fair. All right. That means you sort of have the weekend after all the other assessments have been due. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So I've given you some ideas on the report. I'm happy to meet with groups again. If you want to show me the table, Neil, what do you think? How can it be improved? That's fine. But yeah, now, and just giving you tips on the presentation. The most important thing, please, bring your energy to the presentation. Now, I'm sure it's happened. I've done this myself. I'm at the end of, I'll tell you, this is true. Like Ginny's with us today, and Ginny's done a great job in helping supporting me this semester. And I say to Ginny at the end of each night, oh, how'd tonight go? And then Ginny was saying to me, oh, the second part, you didn't have any energy. And I'm thinking, wow, I felt, and that's true. Sometimes we don't know if the energy is not coming through to you. Okay. And it's not until someone else tells you, oh, we need more energy. All right. And so always be a little more dramatic. If this report is, you chose this, you worked on it in your group. It is a relevant topic. Why? Because McKinsey's talking about it, because something is talking about it in 2021. So therefore, this is really, really relevant. This is really, really relevant because this might help me in a job interview in the next 6 months. Because I might be asked in the interview to comment on this phenomena that you studied. All right, so find a way to get energized on that topic. Okay. All right. There's one group doing last mile delivery. Where's your last mile delivery group? Hello. All right. So not a day goes by when I don't think about that topic. Why? Because I'm going past a lot of individuals on these e-bikes doing Deliveroo, doing Food Panda everywhere. And I think about that empathetically, thinking, you know, I'm proud of those people. At least they're doing something. They're providing a service, they're providing value for a customer. And I think, wow, just that's great. You know, that's what I think about. And you can get so energized by that last mile delivery. If last mile delivery didn't exist, maybe many of us will be naked tonight. Okay. You're naked and hungry. You're with me. You're hearing me here. All right. So find a way to energize your topic. There's another group that's looking at Vietnam. All right. So I was talking to Jacob. I was texting him just last 24 hours. And he told me, oh, I'm working with this banker that's talking about, you know, investing billions of dollars in Vietnam, but Vietnam's closed now. And it's basically, it's likely that it will sink the deal. Like, wow, like, you know, for Jacob, you saw him, he came to present to you. Am I right? Yes or no? All right. Like, and we look at these things that are happening. Oh, when's the borders opening? When's it closing? But for Jacob, his business depends on these big deals. Do you understand? All right. So it's directly connected to these things that we just look at and think, oh, we hope the borders open by next year so we can do our little travel to Bali or our little holiday and all of that. But there's people in Vietnam that just depend on, sorry, we've got to focus on the economy, not just closing everything down. And it's been like that for the last nearly 10 weeks, 3 months in Vietnam. It's killing the apparel industry. Factories are closed and it's creating a huge shortage. Wow, what do you do? Right? So, you know, that group doing Vietnam, you need to just find a way to just make this is real. This is real. Like Vietnam is real in terms of sourcing shift there. Like I shared the data with you that, you know, 54 companies have moved to Vietnam. We talked about that. But what is also real is that those companies that decided to go to Vietnam, like suddenly they're shut down now. Everything's shut down. They can't do anything. What do? You with me here? All right. So this is where you've got to immerse yourself in the topic that you have chosen. And until you do that, you will not come across in your presentation as being the commander and authority on your project. You with me here? All right. So all I'm telling you is find a way to get into that topic that you've done your thing on. All right. Because when you find that way, when you find that switch, and that lightens your energy, and you go onto that video and you record yourself presenting what you're doing, you'll be a totally different person, and your presentation will just light up the room. Okay. So that's what you have to do for your presentation. Are you ready? Can you do that? Lisa, I cannot see you. Where are you? Are you drowning?
Yep, drowning.
Huh?
Thinking on how to solve it, Dr. Neil.
Tell me more. Sorry. Go, Lisa.
Yep. We're just thinking on how to sort this and finish it on time also.
Remind you your group's topic again, Lisa. Let's do this thing. What is it?
It's COVID-19 on the garment supply chain. COVID-19 impacts on the garment supply chain.
In Malaysia.
Garment industry.
Pardon? Garment. The garment. You're doing the garment industry.
Yeah.
All right. So right now, Vietnam. Wow. Okay. It's wow. It's just crazy. All right. Closed. Okay. Gone. All right. What did Jacob tell you? What did Jacob tell you in week 4, week 5? He said Vietnam took over Bangladesh, right, as the second largest apparel exporter in the world, right? Well, in the last 2 months, gone. It's like just closed. You could never believe stuff like that happens, all right? So that's separate from, I know your group, you're focusing on apparel, but I just, wow, not a month goes by and there's not a challenge. You choose an industry, you find a month, there's a challenge. So all of you can find that. Skylar, which group, what are you doing?
We do the last mile delivery.
Okay, Amril, what are you doing? Amril.
We're doing the sourcing shift, like in the electronics industry to Vietnam.
Okay, all right. So motor that on. I'm looking for big things on that one, Amril. We've got very high expectations on your group to do that. Yeah. And don't forget, connect with Jacob. All right. Have a Zoom call with him after you've collected some information. Okay. All right. Nusrat, what are you doing? Your group.
And we are also doing apparel.
Okay, you're doing the apparel. Okay, all right. So even there was a podcast I started listening to called Business Wars, and it's talking about it's not, the project won't talk about that, but this podcast, and you can all link into that through your Apple or your iTunes or whatever. Business Wars, they're talking about Zara, H&M, and Forever 21, and one more top store in the UK, how they all got started and how they started competing with each other over the last decade. And it's a fascinating story. I'm just currently listening to that at the moment. But you're talking about apparel, the sustainability, the challenges, you're comparing those 5 companies. Really, I want you to get stuck into that and eat it up. I want you to become the authority on what is happening to those 5 companies you're comparing with. Okay. That table, that page 5 table with those 5 companies you're comparing. What are you comparing them on? All right. We're near the end of 10 o'clock, but Esther, what are you doing? Your group. Michelle.
Actually,
Esther. Go on, Esther.
Yeah. Actually, I'm with the same group with the Emerald.
Okay, good. Michelle, what about you?
I'm in the same group with Lisa, COVID-19, and yeah.
All right, just a reminder, Michelle, you're holding the microphone close to you. find a way to make sure that that is very clear when you are presenting, okay? All right, because you don't want to have that movement noise going in as you're speaking, okay? JC, what are you doing? Remind me.
The cold chain of vaccine in Malaysia.
Oh yeah, that's very, and you know, this is real, right?
Yeah.
This is real. So you've got to make it real. And, you know, what are the issues, and, you know, what's that big question that you're asking? How many different vaccines are they supplying in Malaysia at the moment?
Basically the teleport transport, basically the vaccine from China.
The Sinovac, is it?
Yeah, Sinovac and the CanSino.
Oh, that's good. Okay, good. Excellent. All right. Okay, any other questions on, I'll formalize the due date of the report so you don't have to worry about any ambiguity on that. But my big message over the last 45 minutes of talking to you is you're very, very busy. I know you've got lots of projects on, but be very, 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 very intentional and purposeful about the topic, the project, and get it done. Okay, get it done. Get the report done as soon as possible. You can use that last weekend to get your presentation out and all things like that, but get that report moving. That's what I would do. Okay, O'Connor's given us 3-4 more days. Please don't be writing the report in that 3 or 4 more days. All right. Okay, use that to get your video presentation together. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Okay. All right. So that's so I hope this last hour has been value to you, and then you have that little bit more motivation to do very well in that last piece of assessment. What do you think?
Professor, what's the weightage difference of the report and the video, the presentation? Is it 50-50 or?
45-55. There's 25
right.
for the report, 20 for the presentation.
Okay.
Doctor, I have a question about Apple.
Yes, Maria, please.
What was the reason for Corning selling directly to Apple instead of Foxconn?
No, it's very interesting. I don't think Corning had the choice. It's just that Apple became its biggest customer directly. Apple sought out Corning and said, okay, we will buy from you directly. And Apple basically dictates who sells to Foxconn and who Apple buys from. It just so happened that Apple was doing that. I don't know if it was an accounting thing or it helped them on dealing with tax issues or something like that. That's another question for another time.
Interesting. Thank you.
If I may add, I believe that Corning has the monopoly on smartphone glass right now. I think most of the big name brands, most of their, like Samsung, Huawei, most of their products, I think uses Corning Gorilla Glass. I think you can go and see. You can go and check your own phone and see the specifications. It's usually missed out because it's not a big deal, but I believe Corning Gorilla Glass is used.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, even for Samsung and all that, it's not tempered glass. Yeah, correct. So let's find news 5. Here we go. All right, what I'm sharing now is, remember each of the groups. So Hunter, we talked about Vietnam. Kate, your group, fast fashion, sustainability. Okay, I want you to eat that up because it is a real it's a big issue, whether you look at the environmental side of it, whether you look at modern slavery, whatever you choose the angle that you focus. You're focused on the environmental. I understand that. Clarissa, groups, you're looking at COVID effects on the global garment industry. So are you still looking at modern slavery, or you changed it, or you just saw at COVID effects? Clarissa, group. Darren, your group.
Yeah, it's still quite focusing on how it will impact the workers' right, actually.
Oh, okay. If you focus on workers' rights, then
during the COVID-19, yes.
All right. So you need to distinguish. Modern slavery is kind of a very extreme definition.
So
what more often happens is worker exploitation. So you just want to make clear that you focus on one and the other, but not both. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr.
It's more likely it's worker exploitation. Modern slavery is something that's it's an extreme version, but the gray area is worker exploitation. I think you'll probably pick up more of those areas. That's what the NGOs are going to be focusing more on. And that video that I posted to the Google Hub, distinguish between exploitation and modern slavery, if you look at that. So that may help you. All right, Adrian, last mile delivery, great. Suba, your group, environmental waste management, is it?
Yes.
Okay. And like you said, have a look at the waste management that was done by one of the teams from last year. And theirs was based on interviews. If you're not doing interviews, then you need to think of another special way of making your stick. Okay.
We are doing the interview.
Oh, okay. Then that is fantastic. Gabriella's group, cold chain logistics, and is it last mile delivery or just vaccine, correct?
Yeah, it may be from the airport to the vaccination center.
Yeah. All right. So, all right, it's coming up on 10. I'm going to love you and leave you, but all of you as a group get together and agree on what is the table that's going to be the middle of your report. What is that table? Okay.
Yeah.
When I say table, it's all about comparing things on different rows. Okay. And the table forces you to compare A with B. A table forces you to choose, what characteristics do we need to consider? The table forces you to think about causes of different things. Okay. And not until you have clarity about what that table is, it's going to be hard to finish your report. Okay.
Is it possible for us to have the marking rubric?
Sure. It's actually provided in Moodle, but I can send it again if you want to.
Really? Thanks.
Absolutely. This is provided in Moodle, but if we go to the final, one, 45%. Okay. Okay, the video presentation, 15 minutes. Oliver. Introduction. Okay. The other thing I want to make very, very clear is the there are 5 marks I'm going to give individual grading, okay, out of that 20. This is for the video presentation. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that some of your presentations, some of you may get 2 or 3 marks lower than others, or you may get 2 or 3 marks higher than others. Okay, so you be mindful of that, not as a stick, but as a carrot, to make sure that your whole group works together, to make sure that you are you present together, you got the energy going together, and it's themed well together, and it's all joined together. Okay. All right. It's very, very important that you do that. Yeah. There's only one group last year that I did mark down 2 presenters because their presentation was really, really below par. So, yeah. Okay. So, any other questions?
This is the rubric for the presentation, right? Is there a rubric for the report?
The report? Yeah, here it is.
Okay.
Okay, so, okay, introduction, focus of the questions. Obviously, that's going to be the first 1 or 2 pages. Okay, formatting, labeling, consistency. All right, so, okay, if you have a table, what is the name of the table? What is the number of the table? Are you referring to that table in the text? And then if you use 10 point for one table, are you using 10 point font for the other table? Are you consistent? Okay. All right. Extensiveness of the information obtained. This is where you actually put in the references. You're referring to, if it's internet research, then you need lots more references. You need to make sure that they are indicated in the right way. Analysis, this is where you're actually looking at the later half of your presentation and you bring it to a crescendo that leads to the conclusions, which is your positives, your negatives, and your surprises. Okay. Presentation impact for the reader, which is more overall. All right, it's just on 10 o'clock. I've got to do 2 things. Number 1, I've got a code for international students. Number 2, next week, we're going to have our guest, Andy McCowan, who is one of the co-founders, CEO of LogChain. How many of you have heard of LogChain? And basically, they are digitalizing the whole logistics supply chain. They provide digitalization service. So you can ask him a lot of questions about all the problems that are happening in logistics around the world today. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. You can also ask him about careers in the type of company that he has. His company is based in Singapore. They're basically selling the information technology as a solution to supply chain procurement teams. Okay, maybe you want to work for a company like LogChain in Singapore. Hands up, anyone interested? Okay, all right, anything's possible. All right, you've got to grab these opportunities. Grab any little opportunity, connect with Andy, go to LinkedIn tomorrow. Go to LinkedIn tomorrow, find him, connect with him, send him a message saying, Andy, thank you for coming to our class. We look forward to listening to your presentation next Wednesday. Why not do that? You know, make a connection. All right. Class, I'm just telling you things. This is stuff that you do even beyond graduating. I want, you know, yes, you're going to do my unit, you're going to pass, you get your transcript, great. But this is the stuff you've got to, it's got to become a habit of how you reach out and you connect. And when you reach out and connect, you create opportunities. When you create opportunities, because someone knows someone else, then a job opening comes and then you get an opportunity for that job. Tell me that's not a good plan to have, yes or no? All right, because if I cannot help you change your habits that make you more employable, more ready, then I'm not doing my job. And Newsrat, I love your background. It is so cool. Does everyone know the background of Newsrat?
Squid Game.
The Squid Game.
Yeah, it's so cool. All right. Okay, it beats Adrian's background now. Sorry, Adrian. Yours is old, Adrian. Newsrat is up to date. All right, so it's good. All right. Okay, there you have it. I hope, number one, just I want you to think, have you got ideas from tonight? Was it useful? Either just for your project, for your assessment, and even beyond the MIB program. I hope it's useful even more in that. Okay. Let me grab the codes for the international students. Thank you so much. Just while I'm grabbing the codes, and it's always great to get a nice CETU rating, but what's important is that we get a high percentage of you to go into the CETU score system and to give your feedback. That's important for Monash, and especially qualitative comments. What works, what doesn't work, what can be improved, things like that. The CETU system is already open and we've got until the end of this month. So I just want to bring that to your attention, and maybe you may want to wait for another week or two before you finalize that. That's fine, but I'm just making that aware. You're aware of that now. Let's just have a look at the codes. You probably see this in front of you now. I'm just going to put it the week 6. You're not supposed to see the 13 workshop, but the workshop for 6th of October. Kate, can you see that? I'm just going to put that in. Okay, put that in, and then the workshop, and then the tutorial. Codes. All right, it's just in the chat room now. Can you all see that? Please, appreciate that. Okay, all right. So my earnest call to all of you, meet in your groups in the next 72 hours and get that middle table agreed on, you know. All right, because that's going to hold your whole thing together. Middle, you know, I don't mean it has to be exactly in the middle, but you know, there's got to be you're leading up to that. That's your evidence you got, and then you actually expand on that in the second half, you know. All right, and remember, as always, I'm available on, you know, so just about any afternoon. If you email me, the group wants to meet, give me a few times and we can choose, and then we meet. Okay. Any last questions or anything? Don't forget tennis ball. Okay. I used to coach tennis, so that's why I like tennis ball. So it's good.
Actually, I have a question, but maybe I'll save it for like the end. if
Okay.
people want-
Is it to do with assessment or group?
Yeah, with the project.
Yeah.
actually.
Look, Amaral, just fire away. Anything that helps the class is fine.
Oh, I mean, it's just like it's about our project. So because we're doing Vietnam, and then I think at the time like Vietnam was doing well, but now it's like not looking so good. So I'm just like wondering how to put that information into our project.
It's more of a footnote. I don't, yeah, okay, I've said that, but don't let that cloud the intention and the theme of your project. The intention and the theme of your project, you're focusing on the attraction of sourcing shift in the electronic sector in Vietnam, correct?
Yep.
Okay, well then just continue to focus on that. That's fine. I don't think long term, you know, the board, you know, things are closed now, they're going to open up and things will get back to normal. But that's, you know, the stuff that's, you know, the incentives that are set for that industry in Vietnam, you know, you want to talk about that. And that, I think that's fine.
Okay, well, I did. It's a footnote.
It's not going to change. It's like, you know, Foxconn, they're set up in Vietnam. They're not going to close down just because of a 6-month closure.
Okay, thanks.
And yeah, and don't forget, you know, head near the top. Head near the top. All right. Come on. Power. And I didn't put the light on. Okay. Oliver's feedback, maybe not have that light on. Is good.
Well, if you can try to switch it around so you have indirect lighting, that might help.
Which
So it
actually
bounces off the wall.
It's bound. Yeah, no, that's too bright because it's 100 watt, Oliver. It's 100 watt LED.
Need some layers of foil.
And this room is just 6 foot by 9 foot. This is like a little prison cell, you know. This, you know, when I turned it on, look what happened, you know. It's just wow. It's just that's it. Can you see the other lines flickering?
Yeah.
Sort of funny, isn't it? Because I think that's the frequency of the LED.
It's a frequency, correct?
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. But
I'll check out the black video, the BMW professor.
Yeah, I'll check that one out. I'll check that out. All right. Love you all. Just heads up. All right. Get your group aligned on that middle part of that project. All right. Come together. Just do it as soon as possible. Okay. And get the report done before week 12 and then use that last weekend to do the presentation, whatever. Okay. I think that would be the best strategy you can have. What do you think?
Let's just get it done.
Yeah. All right. All right. Come on. Attitude. Get it done. You know, you got this thing. Okay. Thank you so much for your great efforts and achievement. Your feedback in the normal area. If you can give me feedback, appreciate that. What's working for you? How can I help and do better for you? Appreciate if I can improve in any way. Always open to improvement. So thank you. Wish you have a lovely evening.
Thanks, Doctor. See you next week.
All right. Good luck with your other assessment too. Thank you all.
Thanks, Doctor.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, Doctor. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
You know, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Hi, Ginny.
Hi, Dr. Neil.
Hi, how was tonight?
Tonight, I think was great. Yeah.
What, you mean the apple part or the last hour?
The upper part was awesome, sir.
Oh.
The last hour is, yeah, you're answering their questions. So I think it's quite good.
Yeah, trying to give value, right? Because they're all under pressure from all, they're doing 4 units, and
Yes, agreed.
there's other units got deadlines and they've got to do different things. So just try and give them ideas. Appreciate that. That's good. Okay. And okay, we've got the codes were given out, so they can fix that. And Sim Ko-young is sort of struggling too, right? You notice that he wrote in to say that he couldn't do the quiz because he forgot all about it. Did you notice that?
Yes. Yeah, I saw that.
In the end, they'll pass and you'll probably just get a D or whatever, but nothing much you can do. But then on the other side, the one that had a medical, I need to think about how to look after that person, because Suba, right? Suba wasn't able to do it. So
Yes.
Suba wasn't able to do it because of medical, but Kim contacted me, we forgot about it. But then there was a third person. Who was that third person that didn't do it? Was there a third person?
Yes. I think it's Tsuchi.
Zichi, was it?
Yeah, I think it's him.
Oh, okay. Did he email me, or we just know because we counted ourselves?
We counted ourselves. He
Oh.
didn't send anything to us.
Oh.
I think he didn't reply you as well. I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I need to email him just to ask him what his situation is. Just to reach out anyway, at a minimum. Yeah. How's everything else going, Ginny?
Yeah, I think it's all well. All good.
Yeah. And so you haven't watched the Squid Game yet, right?
Yes, I have watched it.
Oh, yeah. So that was funny how one of the students had it as their background.
Yes.
When I saw that, yeah, I've seen that one before.
Yeah, it's really good.
It is so funny. And then, yeah, yes, it's good. It's fun.
Yeah, definitely I will send you their mark tonight in the shared drive.
Yeah, all right, we'll do that. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay,
all right.
sir. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Ginny, and good night.
Thank you, Daniel.
All
Good
right.
night.
Bye.